like, God, what will people think if I say like, oh, I want to become a bodybuilder? Like, what will my friends say? But I'd always been quite interested both in kind of functional fitness and kind of aesthetics as well. But people want that quick result, and when they don't see that straight away, it can then have that impact.
Was there an actual switch that you made when you were like, I'm going to become a bodybuilder? Can you remember it?
I heard like horror stories of like, you won't be able to speak, you'll just be dead all the time. Like, because you do look at other people on social media and you kind of compare yourself, even though I know you're not meant to do that. It is crazy how your emotions go up and down. Like,
Placing second, how did that actually feel?
I don't know how I'll feel at that point. Like, I don't know what I was thinking was gonna happen. Sitting at this level of lean, in your head you start to just see yourself as normal.
You mentioned eating disorders. Is that something you've experienced as well?
They'd get newspapers, magazines in for patients, and they'd still have like the diet section, and this is like a diet you should follow to lose weight, and go back into the real world and you're like, oh God, there is still a lot to kind of change.
Do you recommend doing a show to other female listeners out there? So today we are joined by Ash Alderson, bikini competitor in bodybuilding. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for coming on. And the reason that I've approached you to come on was because I feel like, for one, there's not enough females who are talking about bodybuilding on podcasts. I mean, if you go into bodybuilding podcasts, I'm assuming there's a few. But I feel like certainly in the Northeast, there's not many people who I think get to, put their voice out there and help other people. I know that a lot of females are getting into bodybuilding now and stuff like that. And I feel like you've been through the process. I know it's your first time.
Yeah.
You placed second, which has been, obviously it's phenomenal. It's unbelievable for the Northeast as well, and the scene. So, and I know I see you around the gyms and stuff anyway, so I thought, why not get you on? Yeah, so first and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Going into my kind of still in prep, ready for my second show that I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks. So, final push.
So, if you strip it back a bit, how did you get into bodybuilding?
So I suppose I've always been into training, kind of like, everyone's like, when did you start training? And I literally like can't remember a point. I did kind of sport when I was younger. And I think like I signed up to the gym when I was about 14. I think that was the age like you could at the time, like the local leisure centre. So I've always just kind of been in the gym and enjoyed it. And then I kind of went to uni, kind of kept it up there. Had kind of a few people I would train with who were more into kind of weightlifting, and I started to kind of understand it that little bit more. I used to kind of train with different people, so I kind of learned throughout that. I suppose kind of following uni, I just have built kind of my knowledge around. I knew I've always kind of enjoyed it. I knew I always wanted to do my PT course. And then I remember I'd seen kind of bodybuilders around and bikini athletes, and I'd kind of always been intrigued by it.
Were you, when you say you were intrigued by it, what was your actual view on it? Because when I first got into the gym, I couldn't stand all that.
Yeah.
If I'm totally honest, I was quite, I didn't want to say intimidated, but I felt like it was too full on for me.
Yeah.
But when I started to understand it and work with a lot of bodybuilders, obviously filming content and stuff, I started to understand, like, actually it's an unbelievable process. For me, it's not for the aesthetics though. It's for literally like what they're doing in the mind. They develop such a thick skin. With you, when you're at, what were you doing at uni?
Occupational therapy.
Right.
So a little bit, I kind of always wanted to do a sports degree, but I was the classic kind of, I was quite high achieving. My parents were like, you need to do something that'll get you a job at the other end of it, and everyone does sport, and then what you go into from that kind of thing. So then I went down kind of more of a route where there was a job at the end of my degree, but no one in my head. Like I always said, I had a meeting with kind of a sports lecturer at uni about personal training, just about like how to get into it, and it was still kind of several years after that I did, but it's kind of always been on my radar. I suppose about bodybuilding, I'd see people around the gym, and at first, like, I don't know, because I went to Pure Gym for a long time, and there's always this girl with the heels that I used to, because it did almost look more like, oh, they're just standing there posing, and I didn't know loads about it. And then I went to Ultraflex for a bit in York when I lived down there, which kind of was where I got a little bit more introduced to it. And
is that where you went to uni?
Yeah.
Right, I see.
And then, I remember saying to my friend in like lockdown, because I worked down there, and we used to go on walks, like, oh, I quite want it, because I think the thing for me was I'd always been intrigued by it and wanted to do it and see how far I could push myself. But it was kind of what other people thought And then as I got older, I kind of moved away from I've kind of moved away from caring about that as much, if that makes sense.
Right, I see.
So I suppose like those years ago, I was a bit worried about, I don't know why,
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
but
think
I
it's
was
an
like,
age
God,
thing as well.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, God, what will people think if I say like, oh, I want to become a bodybuilder? Like, what will my friends say? And then I just started to kind of almost like drip feed it into conversations like with people like, oh, I've been thinking about doing this. Just to kind of like gauge a reaction. But like you say, which is strange, but then the older that I've got, kind of the less I've cared and the more I've just thought like, actually, I want to do this.
Was there an actual switch that you made when you were like, I'm going to become a bodybuilder? Can you remember it? Yo, what's happening, people? If you are liking the episode so far, make sure you click the like button, hit the subscribe button, and also press the notification bell so you don't miss another episode.
I don't think so. So I started, so I did my PT qualification, not this Christmas, but last Christmas. And then I kind of completely changed my career in July. And I'd been probably going to Ultraflex in Durham from about the January, so probably like a year and a half. And I suppose like just through going there and getting to know a lot of the girls there, like I became a lot more familiar with it.
Yeah.
And there was like a lot more people that I knew who did it, and it didn't become so kind of almost such like a distant topic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
It was like a lot more of in your surroundings. Then I worked at the gym. And then I was like, if I don't do it now, because again, it sounds stupid, but all my friends and things are starting to turn 30, have hen dos, have weddings. I was like, I just need to just do it.
How old are you now?
28.
28. Sorry for asking your age, but I thought I need to put it into context of when you're at uni and stuff. I can see Mike looking thinking, what are you asking her for? But I'm thinking, I know.
It's been several years since then, and I kind of was always that person who was like, I worked in York for a lot of years and commuted, so I didn't have a lot, like my days were very full, in the sense of I'd be out of the house from like 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. And I thought, I don't have time for this now, but when I moved back home, everything was like, when I moved back home and get a job back home, I'll look into it then, which was when I was 26, 27.
With the occupational therapy stuff, what did that job entail?
So I worked on a mental health ward for older people. So it was kind of, it's like promoting people's independence. I always say it's kind of like physio, but supplying them with like equipment and the means to be able to kind of live their life to the best of their abilities, especially like in older people, kind of supporting around the physical health. And things as well, so putting equipment in their homes, kind of.
Right.
With me working in mental health, we do a lot of work around kind of anxiety management, putting plans in place to try and get people kind of well again and kind of back into the community.
What did you learn from doing that job? Like, is there anything that made you realise, because for one, if I was doing that and there was people slightly less able, or you were trying to help people sort of promote that kind of lifestyle and get back into doing normal things and stuff, like I think I would certainly class myself as lucky and be like, actually, do you know what? Like maybe I should go to the gym more, maybe because I can.
Yeah.
Could you say that was something similar as well?
Yeah, massively. Because you kind of saw, I don't know, people's like lives and how different things affected them, and especially like working in mental health, people who I think people have like an idea of kind of what depression is, what anxiety is, but don't actually kind of realize the impact that can have on someone's life. And kind of sometimes you're like, gosh, like I've been here, I've been able to go to the gym, I've been able to do this, and like this person can't even get up out of bed, or dependent whether it be their physical or mental health. But it did kind of make you feel more grateful and kind of thankful for the things that you can do. I would definitely say that.
Was it an emotional time leaving that career behind, obviously to pursue what you're doing now?
Yeah, I would say so. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I suppose the NHS, like everything just became kind of a lot of paperwork. So the amount of time that you actually spending face to face with patients, which is what I enjoyed, kind of just becomes less and less like the higher up you go. So it was just, I wouldn't not go back, but at the time I just thought I want to do something that I can kind of build myself and kind of push that bit further.
When you were getting into bodybuilding, and you were obviously you've had pretty much a lifelong career of training, so it's probably something that's not so far from your norm, which I totally get and appreciate. But what do you think about how young females getting into bodybuilding, or old females, it doesn't really matter, just females in general in bodybuilding? What do you think that can do to someone's mental health? And the reason I ask you this, I can only speak from a man's perspective, but when I look at other men when I was growing up and they were into the gym or into bodybuilding, it used to make me think I could never attain a physique like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just my mindset, but I felt like that was quite negative at the time because I thought, is the drugs involved? Is there that involved? Like, I don't, it's a whole new world. And it kind of tainted my perception of, why can't I just go to the gym and train? Because I'm never going to look like the guy who's stepping on stage.
Yeah.
So it kind of put me off a little bit. Now, I know that sounds mad, but as I started to train more and more and got into the gym, I understood actually that wasn't something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I guess for my own reasons. For you, were you kind of ever put off doing that? And what do you think it's like for other girls in bodybuilding?
I suppose for me, I've always been a person who kind of trains because they enjoy training, and I've never kind of had a period of time where I've like not been to the gym, because I suppose if I ever got sick, like I would switch things up. I kind of always say to people, I go through phases of having a goal, working towards that goal, then I get a bit sick of like the routine and structure, so I move away from it, go a bit more kind of relax with my food, relax with my training. Then I get a bit sick of being relaxed, so then I'll get another goal and kind of work towards that. Now I'm going to ask you what the question was again, because I've gone off topic.
So just in terms of like mental health for females in bodybuilding?
Yeah, so I suppose for me, I'd always kind of work towards, and I'd always been quite interested both in kind of functional fitness and kind of aesthetics as well, so that had always been something I'd been interested in. And I suppose kind of throughout, initially it had never really crossed my mind, and then over the years that I'd started training, some people would make comments, positive ones. When I was in the gym, there was kind of a few bodybuilders still when I was at Pure Gym, and they would say like, you should compete, like you'd fit exactly in like as you are now, you don't really need to do much. Like if I cut down for summer, they'd be like, you're not far away from stage weight, like you could compete with that. And then that kind of got into my head a little bit as well. I suppose for kind of people going into it, I know I think it's hard for people because they don't understand a lot of the time and things behind kind of building your physique, if that makes sense.
I get that.
I often try and explain, because I do get a lot of messages of people, especially now that I'm a PT, saying, hi, like I really want to look like you. Can you build me a bum in? Like I go on holiday in June. This is what I want. And I always try and be quite clear that like building muscle takes time. It's not like a quick fix. And I think it can not mentally affect people, but people want that quick result. And when they don't see that straight away, it can then have that impact.
And so how much of a part did social media play for you in all this? So did you used to look at other girls and stuff on social media thinking, I want to look like that? Did you feel like there was pressure from social media to look a certain way? And even without the bodybuilding side of things, just in general, going to the gym and keeping that up?
Yeah, I think... I suppose, definitely. I definitely had kind of people, especially when I was younger, who I was like, I really kind of, you look at kind of like Tammy Hembrow, and there was another girl I used to follow, Amanda Finney, and I used to kind of really, kind of almost like aspire to be like that. And it was almost kind of past the point where you thought like I'd be able to achieve that. But they were kind of, for me, I found it quite... inspiring, but again I kind of was always under the mindset of just like I knew that you just had to kind of keep going to the gym, keep being consistent. I know, so I used to do gymnastics when I was younger. There was quite a lot, I suppose, aesthetics wise, again there was quite a lot of pressure on weight and what you look like, how you look like, because I did acro, so you were partnered with people based on kind of almost like your physique, if that makes sense, because you got marked down by the judges if you were...
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah. I think a lot's changed since then, but if you'd almost have to be like a similar body type, because if someone was kind of maybe held more body fat and someone didn't, that would be marked down at the time when I did that. So we used to kind of get weighed every week. So again, I feel like I've always had that pressure. That's
crazy, that. And how young were you when you did? Were you young doing that?
Yeah.
So you would get weighed at a young age?
Yeah. So I started when I was 11, but there was people like in my class, like 7, 8, 9. Like I could tell you my weight from when I was like 11 years old, like every week.
The thing is, Ashton, right? Like obviously that's a good thing for you because you've turned out where you are and you're pursuing a career which kind of ties in with that. Like you're weighing your food, you're on prep, you're going through these mental struggles of I need to weigh a certain weight. But I think that's really bad for a lot of people, isn't it? Did you experience anyone in that scenario who it didn't work for, getting weighed all the time and stuff?
1,000,000%, yeah. There was like, and again, I think that's why it's stopped now. But even like you didn't have the understanding then. I think, like I say, thankfully, it never kind of negatively impacted me. It did to a lot of girls at that age. Kind of, there's a lot of eating disorders, things like that. But I remember when we used to do that when we were younger, you had no idea of what was healthy, what was not. So there was times when we'd go to the session and we'd not drink anything and try and run to the toilet before we got weighed because we'd be like, right, it's weigh day. We can't do this, we can't do that, because you just didn't have that. You weren't taught the kind of basics, which almost makes me now want to teach people that. Like,
get the foundations right.
Because you just see so many kind of, even if it's not in kind of an eating disorder official diagnosis, you do see a lot of kind of disordered eating about. I find that
I know what you mean. I'm sorry to cut you up there. I was getting a bit excited there because you mentioned eating disorders. Is that something you've experienced as well?
No, so again, I haven't personally, but I know people who have. But I do find it, and again, working in mental health, I've worked with people with eating disorders, and I used to, I've worked in like various settings, so I've worked kind of quite closely with people with that, and it's just like a topic that I've always found quite interesting. And again, it's kind of driven me to want to, I don't know, educate people a bit more, because like I say, it's hard, I find, what am I trying to say? Because I know that sometimes there's this thing now on social media that's moving quite a lot away from aesthetics, and it almost at times I think feels frowned upon to like want to look good, because everyone's now like, it's fitness, like, oh, you're not that healthy if you look that lean, and this, that and the other. So I try and kind of do the best that I can to kind of educate people around that.
And see, it's funny you mention that, right? Because I feel like, and I don't want to get cancelled for saying it, but I feel like it is going the other way, like almost promoting being fat. Like, and I get it. Like, and the reason I say this, right? So when I was always a fat lad. All through growing up, I was fat, right? I left school at 16.5 stone, so I was fat. I lost about 7 stone. I've already said the story before. But for me, I did it all the wrong way. Basically, poverty Carls, just basically not eating much. Overtraining, didn't know what I was doing, going on stupid runs, feeling guilty for eating a Snickers bar. But I was very lucky that I didn't develop an eating disorder. However, when I started to understand the fitness industry and looking for help, because I didn't really know anyone around me. So when I was looking at other people, they were like, just bump your calories right down and get shredded. And I was like, okay, now I'm shredded, I've got abs, but I feel like death. Like, I really don't feel good. Like, and I can't lose any more weight at this point because I've literally hit that plateau. And I feel like I want to make sure that, again, because like in this industry, in the kind of service that I've set up, I want to complement the industry. So I want to work with more and more PTs who are sending out the right message, but I don't want to work with people who are promoting things like that are going to make people effectively ill. Like, you know what I mean? I want people who understand like the mental side of it. And I feel like that's why I've got, having you here, because you've been an occupational therapist and you understand the mindset and stuff. I feel like there's more clout to you being a PT than a lot of PTs who just get in for the sake of it. Now, I know that people do get into this now because you become an online coach and make X amount of money and do all the rest of it. But I feel like as long as you do the right thing and help people properly, clients will never leave you anyway. So I don't feel like there's a need for people to, coach for a certain amount a month or I'm going to put him on a stage, because ultimately, why are you doing that? It can develop bad things as well. And I think there's more people like you in the industry who can say the right things. They've taught the talk, they've walked the walk. And I'm buzzing that you've put yourself through a prep because you've actually been through that crap. Do you know what I mean?
And I suppose that was another, I'd always wanted to do that, I'd say, for myself, to see how far I could push myself. Just to see if I could do it, really, just like, and again, like as a bit of a challenge or like a goal. It's something that I'd always wanted to do. I've always been interested in aesthetics, but as well, I do find, because sometimes I feel like people don't think I'm relatable because I've always been in shape and I've never been overweight. And I just wanted to be able to say, and even now, like, hopefully my clients will agree that, like, I'll come in and be like, wow, I know, like, because if they're like, oh, I've struggled this week, I ended up like eating X, Y, and Z. I can relate to that a lot more now, and I'll be like, yeah, I know how that feels, but think about how we'll feel the next day. And I feel like I can, even though this is a more extreme version, I feel like I can relate to a lot of the issues that people face when they're trying to lose weight and when they're trying to kind of restrict their eating or anything like that. And again, like you say, around the mindset as well.
Going into that prep then, was it as hard or harder than what you thought it would be? If you don't know by now, I run a business called The Content PT. I create content for influencers, PTs, online coaches and fitness brands all around the world. So if you are someone who's in need for sexy content for your social media, or you really want to maintain a competitive edge in your industry, drop me a DM on Instagram.
So I would say up until my first competition, it's kind of hit and miss. I think I really prepared myself for the worst because I heard like horror stories of like, you won't be able to speak, you'll just be dead all the time, like you'll really struggle. Like, so I was thinking, I was telling all my friends, I probably won't be able to see you. Like, I'm like, if there was any events or anything, I was like, I don't know how I'll feel at that point. Like, I don't know what I was thinking was gonna happen. Right. But you do hear people like where they're like, you just want to be on your own, you just don't have the energy. So I found that kind of the first few weeks, fine. I didn't really feel like you were on prep. Probably I struggled from about 3 to 4 weeks out. That was kind of a hard point for me, just in terms of, I don't know what it was. I didn't really feel that emotional. I was just struggling a lot more. That was kind of the bit where we really started to dig. So it was a bit more around kind of food focus, things like that I was struggling more with. Socially, I didn't really struggle, but I am quite a talker. Right. And I find I'm quite an extrovert as well. So not necessarily where I'm kind of particularly loud, but I get a lot of my energy through other people. So on a weekend, like a lot of people were like, God, you're going out at a week out, like you're crazy. How do you have the energy? I don't know how you're doing these social events. But for me, like if I was sat in the house on a Saturday, I would feel a lot more tired. I would be kind of like, what's in the cupboard? Thinking about things a lot more and just like, I don't know, because you have nothing else to focus on. Whereas I found that when I was out and about at these events, even though I couldn't eat or drink, like I could still have a good time and enjoy myself, and it would take my mind off prep a little bit and just kind of have that bit of normal life. Because it is very intense. I would probably say I didn't expect how much time I would need for it, if that makes sense. In my head, I was thinking, Do
you feel like you started, I mean, well, in hindsight, you play second, so like you started at the right time, but do you feel like you'd not left yourself enough time?
So I suppose I did quite a short prep. So I did 13 weeks, which I know a lot of girls do kind of at least kind of 16 to 20. So 13 was quite short. I'm not annoyed that I did that. I think for me, when I first started out, if I was thinking 16 to 20 weeks, not knowing what a prep entails, I'd be like, God, that is too much. Like, I don't want to do that. And for me, again, I didn't really want to prep over Christmas. Jenny felt that we could get to a point. I might have placed first if I'd started 3 weeks earlier and had that full 16 weeks. But at the same time, I was quite happy with the time that we did for my first prep, if that makes sense. Now I know what it entails, and that the first few weeks kind of didn't feel too much because I was still kind of on quite high food and things like that. Next time, if I did compete again, I'd probably give it that bit longer. Knowing kind of we wouldn't have to go maybe so hard, that might make it a little bit easier. But yeah, I don't regret when just given that time for my first time, if that makes sense, because it was all quite new.
So obviously you're a PT. Yeah. Now, was any part, be truthful here, was any part of you doing the show for business?
I suppose it wasn't initially, because I'd always wanted to do it. Like I say, I do find that kind of, I suppose one of the reasons was because I wanted to feel like I could relate to people more, and if I'd been through that and done that, then that would also help me relate to my clients a lot more. But aside from that, it wasn't really, I wouldn't say kind of majorly to do with anything business related other than being able to kind of have that experience to bring to my clients.
Has it helped your business though? Because the reason I ask that is because I know loads of lads who will do a show, they'll get a massive spike in socials, they'll start getting loads of inquiries and they'll get a few more people on. For me, if I was a PT, I think that's definitely what I'd feel like I'd have to do for business.
Yeah.
Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I was to compete and I didn't want to compete and it was just for business, I guess it would be wrong.
Yeah.
Because what message am I putting out there?
Yeah.
So for you, obviously placing second, how did that actually feel?
So crazy, really.
Were you confident?
I suppose I was kind of on the line of confidence. Like some days I'd be like, oh, actually, like I look okay. Like I feel like I'd kind of, because you do look at other people on social media and you kind of compare yourself, even though I know you're not meant to do that. But you're like, actually, like, yeah, I look something like that, or oh, they placed whatever, and maybe I'm not too far away, and this, that, and the other. But then the other half of you, kind of in that prep, it is crazy how your emotions go up and down, like day to day. Even like people will say like hour to hour, which I do agree with, that I'd never experienced before. Like 1 hour I'd be like, oh, I feel amazing, and then the next hour I'd be like, God, I feel absolutely horrendous. But yeah, so I suppose on those other days, I'd be like, oh God, like I'm not lean enough. And there was like a long time, and even now, I think sitting at this level of lean, in your head you start to just see yourself as normal. So I suppose I had documented quite a lot of my prep before my first competition, and I've kind of pulled back a bit, and I think that's mostly been due to when you're cutting down to start with, everything's new. You're like, oh, a new vein. Oh, oh, I've never looked like this before. Like
you start seeing striations and that.
Yeah,
you're like, I know.
Whereas kind of between the competitions, because you've seen yourself peaked, for that you start to feel like not lean anymore, or
the thing
like
is,
not as lean.
I guess for you though, not making excuses for you, but you place second, but you've trained all your life pretty much.
Yeah.
So like you will have trained more than a lot of the girls you compete against. Ultimately, I know not bodybuilding centric. But still, you've certainly had a discipline which no other person has. Like so, I think if anyone's gonna do it, it's someone like you. That's pretty much right. What I want to ask you, Ashton, is I'm calling you Ashton. Is it Ash or Ashton? What do you like to call?
Either, to be fair.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you did that show, why then? Like, why did you pick that time to do it?
So
was there a reason? Like, were you at a certain level of body fat? Like, I know why people compete when they compete. There's certain things will happen. Yeah. But for someone who's listening or watching this, they might go, I have seen her kicking around. Why did you start then? Why did you do a 12-week prep then? Or do you know what I mean? Like, what was the rate? Was it 13-week you said?
Yeah, 13-week. I suppose so. I am quite a social person. I like to go out. I like to go out for food. I like to go out for drinks. I knew I wanted to do that prep. In my head, I was like, right, I need to try and look at a time that I don't have many social events on, because I don't want to, and that is purely like the reason. So I was like, right, this time, like I've got this chunk of time. I knew over summer I wouldn't want to prep over summer. Again, just for me, I have quite a lot on over summers. So I knew I wanted it to be at the beginning of the year. Like I say, a lot of my friends turn 30 next year. I was thinking there'll be this party, that party. I was like, oh, I don't want to miss any of them. So
Madden.
So this year I was like, right, I've got a good chunk of 4 months. I had like a hen do, I had a wedding, not mine, but that I was like, had to factor in. But I was like, I don't think there's going to be a time where I'm not going to have kind of anything on. But that was kind of why I chose that time. And I suppose I chose that show because it's my sister's hen do and wedding coming up, right? And I wanted to be kind of a bridesmaid for a wedding. And when I spoke to Jenny, I was like, I want to have reversed out. So again, it sounds really stupid. I didn't know what I was going to look like when I was like at my leanest point. I was expecting in my head like to be this awful like gaunt like like I remember saying to everyone like, I'm going to look like, everyone was like, oh, it's exciting. I was like, no, I'm not going to look good by the end of it. I was like, I won't look like I was thinking, I don't know what I thought I was going to look like. Again, similar, just I didn't have I just know when people go like that lean, I was thinking, God, my face is going to look awful. So I'd said to Jenny for my sister's wedding, like I wanted to make sure that I'd kind of reverse back up, and I was kind of at a medium weight. But yeah, that was mostly just to do with that. I'd said, and again, to a lot of people, like I wanted to do the prep for me. I wanted to enjoy it all, and maybe, like I say, some people are so routine with everything and don't go out and don't do X, Y, and Z. Whereas I always said, I want to enjoy it. I still want to go to these events again. Granted, I couldn't eat or drink at them,
of course.
but I wanted to
But you can
still
still be
kind
there.
of, go and like enjoy myself and just like enjoy the prep rather than it be like feel like this chore. So that's why I kind of done it in the way that I did.
I think that's kind of inspiring, that, like, for other people who are maybe thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you don't, I mean, in an ideal world, you just be optimal as out, not
Yeah.
go to anything,
Yeah,
live like
yeah.
a monk. I get it. But then you've also did it for your first time, placed second, and had a social life. So you've
Yeah.
kind of ticked all the boxes. Like, that's the ultimate thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
surely.
Yeah, and that was what I kind of wanted. Again, for me, I know I'd be miserable if I was like sat at home doing nothing. So I wanted to kind of be able to maintain that, even because I went to my friend's birthday like a week out from the competition.
Mad
And
that.
I was like scared to ask Jenny. Not that I didn't know what she was going to say. But I was
Did you have a bit of
thinking,
cake? Did you have a little bit of cake?
No, I actually was like, I am a week out here. Like, I was really strict. I took my check-in photos the next day. I had my chicken and veg in my little freezer bag that I ate at the bottomless brunch when everyone else was eating their food. But I was like, God, will I be allowed to go here? Like, because Pete was like, oh, you need to rest. You don't want to be fatigued and this, that, and the other. And I was thinking, I'll feel better if I go there. But yeah, so that was something that I'd always kind of wanted to keep doing.
What was your support network like when you were going through this? Mum and dad, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, so my mum and dad didn't come to my show, but they were quite supportive of it. I don't see them loads. We speak quite a lot, but like my mum, like
Just
my
naturally,
dad sent me like a good luck message at first. Actually, were they even that? Well, I just kind of explained what I was doing, and I would send updates to my mum, like, oh, this is my posing now, and this is this, and yeah, they were both kind of quite supportive. My dad did bodybuilding for a little bit when he was younger.
Right, I see.
So he, just did it kind of a bit on the side because my uncle did, so he just dabbled in it a little bit. So he, I suppose, kind of knew what it entailed.
It's mad because I've got a little girl, right? And I'd absolutely I'd shit myself if she was like, I want to be a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Like, not, I'd be like, do
Yeah.
you, I'll support you all the way,
Yeah.
I'll be there, right? But I'd worry massively from like an eating point of view, and are you doing it for the right reasons? And I think, again, that's why having you on is kind of shining light on, it's not all about that. Like, you can set yourself goals and achieve something for you. Obviously, you've got a business that's kind of in line with what you do. You come from that kind of background. Makes sense. Definitely does. For you as a PT, what is your goal? I know that sounds mad. Obviously, you want to get people in shape, but do you want to focus more on the mental side of things? Do you want to put people through preps? Is it a case of you just want to help anybody?
Yeah, I think I've always said I'll kind of always be a bit more lifestyle, helping everyone. But yeah, mentally, I still want to kind of support people, and I have kind of quite a lot of conversations with my clients who, I remember when I first started speaking to Lucy, who I work with, and I was like, God, I don't know if, like, am I doing this right? Like, how do you change someone's mindset? And even though that had been my job for like years, really, and like we had this conversation about, it is just conversations, but it's quite reassuring because now I'll have clients that come to me and they'll be like, you've actually changed my mindset so much. Like, when I go out now, I'm just conscious of getting something with protein in, or I don't feel guilty if I just have like a little bit of chocolate on a night, whereas in the past, like, I would have. So yeah, I do kind of feel like I want to help everyone as best that I can, but I probably wouldn't go down the route of kind of competition prep and things like that at the moment, anyway, because I feel like I'm still learning quite a lot about that.
What do you think the current state is of the fitness industry?
Do
you think it's in a healthy place?
I'd say yes and no. I think it's...
Why would you say no?
I suppose there is just still like a lot of like you see, like you don't even I sometimes go on Instagram and see people quoting these videos that are like out on TikTok about like do these exercises to lose like body fat on your arms and do this and like sometimes you look at those and think wow, like do these still exist? Like you just I've often said, and I think I learned quite a lot in my PT course that we got taught, so my course was quite thorough and it was like really good. I did it with the PFCA and they kind of said, what you see on your Instagram isn't what everyone else sees.
Yeah.
Like they often say, don't feel stupid putting stuff out about what is protein, what are macros, because yeah, you follow a lot of coaches, PTs who don't need to know that, but actually people don't know those basic things. So they said to kind of like remember the basics, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
and
of
not feel,
course.
because sometimes you do feel like, oh, everyone must know.
Like
what,
you're teaching people how to suck eggs.
Yeah, like everyone must know this by now. But then again, it was quite interesting when I worked in the hospital. Like, like it reminded me like how little knowledge people in the real world had, if that makes sense. Like I remember having this conversation with a woman I worked with in like over lunch, and people would often comment, and again, similar the health and fitness thing, like if you eat healthy, it gets commented on. I was in the shop the other day and the man was like, oh, where's all your chocolates and biscuits? When he was like scanning all my stuff. But yeah, I was speaking to this woman and she said, oh, so if you eat protein and lift weights, you don't, like, you can lose weight. And I was like, yeah, like, what? She was like, oh, I thought if you lifted weights, it made you put on weight, so that's why I've never lifted them.
That's
and like,
mental, that, isn't it?
Yeah, and like that was like a year ago when I was like working, and people just have this like perception of
they don't understand just calorie deficits and just they just don't understand
and
the
then
simple
people
things.
look at like protein, like protein bars and stuff are more like artificial and processed, but people be like, oh, like they're bad for you, shouldn't really be eating those. They're full of this while they're sat eating kind of the Greg's pasty or
Mad, that, innit?
whatever. And so I think like education and stuff, like that's why I would say no, because I think there's still just like a lot of like misinformation out there. And again, even in magazines, you don't tend to see them that much because they're just in the shop. But when I was on the ward, they'd get newspapers, magazines in for patients, and they'd still have like the diet section, and this is like a diet you should follow to lose weight. And like I say, because you're on social media with all PTs and coaches, you're like, oh, there's not much of that anymore. And then you actually go back into the real world and you're like, oh God, there is still a lot to kind of change.
Absolutely mad, isn't it? I think that's what people need to do. They just need to be educated on a basic level, regardless, and then they can make their own decisions and stuff. And again, that's why people like you, that's what we want. We want more people doing that and going through, like, understanding mindset. This is how not to fall off the track. It's easy for someone to say, well, look at you, you've been at the gym all your life, but you still understand what it's like. That's why the prep for you, I think, is very important. I wouldn't have just got any female PT on. That's not what it was about. It was about someone who's put themselves through them times. Like, you've literally been in the trenches. I wanted to kind of wrap it up a little bit. I know we're kind of pressed for time. I wish I could have you on for ages, but in terms of social media, obviously me personally, that's what I do. I create content for people like yourself, people, online coaches, and I only work with ones who I can actually understand their vision. Like, I'm really particular. I've definitely done myself out of loads of business over the years because I don't want to just work with any online coach. Do you think that an online coach or a PT needs to be on social media?
I think I'm laughing because I always start my sentences with I think, and Lucy always takes me. That I would argue that it's like massive. Like, I wouldn't, like, I've built everything through social media, if that makes sense. And kind of before I started my business, I started my fitness Instagram just because it was something I was interested in. Before I was a PT, I got quite a few inquiries saying, are you a PT? Do you do online coaching? Do you do this? So it kind of set me in good stead for that. When I did my qualification, I kind of got quite a few inquiries through straight away. And like you said, my competition prep, like, I was quite overwhelmed with how much people have, like, interest people shown. Like, so many people have messaged, like, all of my friends, like, my clients ask about it every single session. They're like, how's your prep going? Have you done this? Like, congratulations. And it's like being so overwhelming. Again, based on my PT course, they would argue that when we had this discussion, that you can build a business without social media, but I would personally think it would be quite a lot harder to do, if that makes sense, especially like being a PT and putting yourself out there, just because a lot of everything's kind of based around social media these days.
Would you recommend doing a show to other female listeners out there?
Yeah. I would say if you've thought about it and kind of it's something that you want to do for yourself, then definitely like I've kind of like I'm really glad that I've kind of gone through the process. When people say, would you do another one? I'm quite like, I don't know. Again, I quite like the thing that I've missed most, like when I've been prepping, is just the variety of training. Like I quite like jumping into functional bits. I like doing like the reformer Pilates upstairs. I like going on the odd run.
You don't like getting a Domino's on a Friday night and smashing legs on Saturday morning though?
Yeah,
as well. It's stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I was saying it was funny because a lot of people were like, it's crazy how much is centered around food. Like I was like, oh, like I've been going on like beach walks with my friend. Like beach walks, like are terrible when you can't go to like Love Lily for breakfast after. Like I'm like, oh, like I didn't realise that actually every time I went to the beach, like I got fish and chips, or like I went for breakfast and I got a hot chocolate. And it's like little things like that you miss. But not so much actually the kind of big nights out. It's like actually so much is like centralised around like eating and drinking, whether that be right or wrong. So yeah, I've always said I don't know if I'd do it again, but I'm so glad that I've kind of like put myself through it. I've seen like almost what I'm capable of. I know that if I did want to do it again, like I've got that kind of more understanding, more knowledge. But yeah, I would definitely say to get a good coach. Again, Jenny for me has been like, I can see 1,000,000% why people say you need a coach. You get to a point where like in my check-ins, I was like, God, like I'm not ready. I'd look awful. And like we got to the point where I was just take my check-in photos, send them, like not even looking at them. She was like, don't look at them, don't get in your head, just like take them, send them. So you do need kind of that support for mindset and things like that. And it is hard. Like that I've been, I would say, quite lucky because again, things like digestion, sleep, everything like that for me hasn't really budged. Which I know again for a lot of people are like, God, are you still sleeping? I only got 2 hours a night. And like I've been quite lucky in that sense as well. So I know it can be quite difficult if people start struggling with those issues.
I think saying like when you said there about the coffees and the going for Love Lilies and all these type of things, right? It's funny because I think if anyone's going to do a show, they need to understand the sacrifice is going to be massive. So I believe your why has got to be big enough to do that. Obviously for you it was. And again, you've kind of put yourself through it. Speaking about it is going to help someone. That's the whole idea. Like if you're going to help anyone, there's no point in doing a podcast. That's the way I look at it. And I feel like if someone's out there listening or watching this and they're going to go for that, obviously take it from Ashton, you know what I mean? Like ultimately you put yourself through something like that, you're going to sacrifice all them things. You've managed to still go to nights out or certain dues, but you haven't drank or you haven't ate the food or stuff like that. So even doing them events, albeit the sociable, you're still not really getting involved as much as what you want. So I would definitely be mindful of that when you're going into a bodybuilding show, because you can't just, well, you can duck out of it, but
and I think it is like I said before, like time is such a sacrifice, how much time you spend in the gym. Like by the time you do cardio, training, posing, abs, and it's like such a massive chunk of time. But I do think just explaining, like all my friends have been amazing. Like no one at any point like have felt any pressure. Like no one's been like, oh, just have a drink. Like they've respected kind of what I'm doing. Like I explain at first, like people are a bit like, why are you doing that? I know a lot of my friends were like, so what you win? And I'm like, oh, just like a trophy. Like at the bigger ones, you might win money or whatever. And they're like, oh, so you're doing all this, like, but you don't win like anything.
But
like
they didn't realise. They don't realise. Ultimately, like more people should put themselves through shit situations. That's what I believe. I believe hold yourself in uncomfortable scenarios. I've had to date all my life. I really believe that other people have got to do that, because you find out more about yourself by doing something that you absolutely hate than doing stuff that you love all the time. But Ashton, thank you so much for coming on the show.
That's okay.
Honestly, it's really appreciated. And if we've got enough time, we'll get a part 2 in at some point.
Yeah.
But thank you. Cheers.